The case today is Fisher versus Department of Justice. And again, this is a case which could have serious implications on Jack Smith's case against President Trump out of Washington, D.C. So Fisher versus the United States. Fisher was one of the people who did enter the Capitol. He was charged with a number of crimes, 7 different counts, but he is challenging one of those counts, and that is obstruction of an official proceeding under Section 18 of the U.S. Code 1512. And that's because there's a debate that goes back and forth between even courts now, the district court, which agreed with Fisher, the appellate court, which did not, which said that when you're talking about that code provision, that criminal code provision, you're actually talking about tampering with evidence. You're not talking about tampering with a actual procedure, like they had to, slow down to have their procedural vote on the Electoral College counting. You're actually talking about tampering with evidence. And so there's this disagreement between the district court and the Court of Appeals. It's very significant that the Supreme Court has decided now to take this case up. And here's why. President Trump, unlike Fisher, who was charged with 7 different counts, and he's only challenging one is unconstitutional, President Trump was charged with 4, but 2 of those fall under this category. So if you erase those 2 of the 4 charges from Jack Smith, which are the conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and the obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, all you're left with is very generic, which the Supreme Court and federal courts don't love, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., how? And then conspiracy against rights. Whose? The world, and specifically our government here in the United States, is to, they basically said, well, Israel, since we were able to shoot these, you were able to shoot these down, and other partners were able to, keep people relatively safe with minimal deaths caused by Iran, that you really, really shouldn't respond with any kind of military action inside Iran. And, you think about, Chris, this happening to any other country in the world, even if the U.S., you could use an example, but any other country in the world, if they came under that massive attack and their defenses and their allies' defenses, yes, were that good, they still, I don't think, would just respond with, hey, let's put some sanctions. Now, I know Israel's in a different spot. They're not one of the biggest countries in the world, so we'll leave it to Israeli leaders to decide what's best for Israel. But the idea that the immediate world reaction is don't hit back.
Exactly. And, I think President Biden put it this way, you got to win, take a win. And, so many nations urging restraint. But as to your point, what other nation would allow 350 drones, missiles, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles to be fired at them? And even though it was a great success, you have to fight back. Jonathan Conricus, we've had him on our show as well. He made the point, the rules of engagement here in the Middle East, if you get hit, especially from somebody else's territory, you've got to hit back. So Israel has to have a response, and it has to be likely on Iranian territory. When's that going to happen? Remains to be seen. I'll tell you one possible scenario, and I just got off the phone with Jonathan Conricus. He thinks maybe Israel's going to take a bit of time to allow this coalition to build with the Arab nations and the United States, almost let Iran stew for a bit. Whenever Israel's going to respond. And maybe it's after Passover. Passover starts next Monday night for about a week, celebrating the Israelites' deliverance from Egypt.
House Republicans voting to enforce stricter Iranian sanctions and stopping China from purchasing their oil. We've seen a call from Israel as well to put significant financial sanctions on Iran. I don't know if it's their attempt to say, hey, world, if you do this, maybe we won't respond as aggressively militarily, but you've got to put on, very serious sanctions on Iran. Do you see that actually moving through the entire Congress and the Biden administration actually signing off on sanctions that are that strong against Iran?
Well, it certainly would be an admittance that they were wrong about changing the Trump policy on Iran sanctions. Remember, we had them completely squeezed. I took a lot of heat from the German media for being too strong on telling German companies that they shouldn't be doing business with Iran. I think most of the German media now realize that was the right policy. Donald Trump was right to squeeze the Iranians. And we saw when Joe Biden switched the policy and decided to engage with the Iranians, and sometimes engagement works, but I think the evidence had shown that engagement with the Iranians does not work. And yet the Biden administration and Democrats engaged with Iran, gave them sanctions relief, gave them credit and cash to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars, and then we had a war. You shouldn't be surprised when you fund the Islamic radical regime in Tehran that you're going to get terrorism and war. And they did it throughout the whole region. So this is, one of those things that just defies common sense. They took the Houthis off the terrorist watch list. All of these things, you've got to ask yourself, Jordan, what was Biden thinking? Because this radical woke left ideology has consequences, and Israel is the first one to realize it.
So many world leaders, whether it's at the UN or even the U.S. president, basically trying to tell Israel how it should respond to this unprecedented attack by Iran. And I just want you to know that our team at the ACLJ and our supporters at the ACLJ are coming together to make it clear that we believe that Israel should be able to respond the way that you choose, the way that you believe is best to respond to this unprecedented Iranian aggression.
I agree with you completely. We appreciate the support that we receive from different countries. But let me ask you that. Do you really think that if the attack was on London, for example, Prime Minister Sunak would have said the same, show restraint? Or President Macron, if France was under attack from Iran? So I think we should be polite, tell them that we respect their opinion. But at the end of the day, we have to do what's important for our security. And that's why I don't see any other option only to retaliate to this aggressive, unprecedented attack. And I believe it will happen. I don't think we have any choice.
It's a victory for Israeli defenses and for the region that they were able to stop mass casualties from occurring from this Iranian attack. That is great. It's wonderful. At the same time, to prevent those mass casualties cost billions of dollars of military equipment spent, like you said, and resources. You've got to then replenish those resources immediately because Iran could do this at a moment's notice. Yet again, it's a much bigger country than Israel. So you've got to make sure that is Israeli funding, which now Speaker Johnson has got separately, will be voted on. So it won't be voted on together with Ukraine. So hopefully that makes its way through the House and the Senate and gets bipartisan support so that Israel can begin to rebuild the weapons it needs to make sure that the Iron Dome and David's Arrow and these other devices that were utilized to protect Israeli citizens, that they are replenished. Because I think you're absolutely right. One of the victories of these terror groups is to deplete your resources. It's to tire your people out, deplete your resources, and for people to think of you as a dangerous place in the world, Logan. Yep. Like you just said, Israel is a major economic power. Israel is a major tourist power. Right now, it's hard to think of Israel as either of those because of what's happened on October 7th and what happened this weekend.